Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Thor Templar, and I've got another very interesting report on, you could call it a book review of, and also a report on a very important clairvoyant that was very active into the 1960s and into the 70s, I believe. And it's Gerard Croiset. And that is spelled C-R-O-I-S-E-T. And there's a book written on him by Mr. Jack Harrison Pollock. Croiset the Clairvoyant. Now, this is a Dutch man, not to be confused with other Dutch psychics who were popular throughout the 70s and 80s. This is someone that most people probably haven't heard of. And as usual, I mean, there's so many of these people out there and there are books written on them, particularly this book was written in the 1960s, went through 3 different printings, which is interesting. It's printed by Bantam, I believe, and by a noted author. And this was very typical of the time, and they recorded these things, which is very important. These people are now forgotten. But if I said Unamazing Randy or Penn Jillette, you would remember these people who have no impact on our life whatsoever except to point out nothing. They are people who go out and empower themselves and make money for themselves. I mean, that's the whole idea of Penn Jillette when he goes out. What is he doing? He's promoting his show, and he states it in his books, etc. How much he believes in anything is hard to say, but he's out there flopping his big giant mouth along with the little turd that he so much loves, the unamazing. Both high school dropouts, both nothing more than low-level entertainers. So what does all this mean to us? So it's important that you understand the classic good people out there. And this was a person who was a clairvoyant who has been proven time and time again to be correct. Now, here we go again. You know, the first thing I did after finishing this book was go over to the sewer of knowledge, which is, of course, Wikipedia, the Witlesspedia. It's witless. And of course, as usual, the skeptic campus went out there and messed with all these things. And then people go there for information. Where else are they supposed to go? Well, hopefully these will remedy that somewhat. The whole idea is that this person was disgraced on there, saying they had no abilities. He was tested by one person, and they claimed he had no abilities. That particular case and everything else is, again, a distortion. This book here by Jack Harrison Pollock, which you can find, I'm sure, online or at ABE Books somewhere. Usually these old books, which are ignored, you can get for $4 or $5, usually with shipping included. If you want to read about what's really happening, real research done by professional people. Now, this man was highly tested by a professer at the top university in Holland, the Netherlands. So it is important that everyone knows this. So giving you college names and the people and everything else, I will give you the noted professor, but he worked with different police departments, which is what this college professor from Ulrich University in Holland tested him time and time again, because, you know, it really gets into abusive stuff, you know. When these psychics are constantly tested, constantly looked at like they're some sort of frauds, freaks, or other things, instead of working with them as the great people they are, respecting them, and paying them where they should be. I mean, no wonder the world's in mess when the most important people on this planet who can heal and give information that your common little statistical data, your corrupt police departments, the garbage out there can never produce, are treated like they're trash, and they're some sort of zoo animal, like curiosity. As much as I'm a fan of Andrei Poucharek, reading his book on Uri Geller, he treated him like a circus monkey. Come here, spends hours and hours of testing after you do your shows, which you have to make a living for. And when Uri Geller protested that he actually wanted to make money from this because he's a poor person, what am I going to do? Who cares about all this? 100% agree with him. And that's why parapsychology is in the sewer and should be flushed. It doesn't provide anything for anybody. A few of the bigger cowardice mouths, and there isn't even many of those, go and write books and then hawk these to make money for themselves. But W.H.C. Tenhoff, director of the Parapsychology Institute in Occult, which is part of the major university there. So, studied him for years and years, and not in a slovenly way. Everything that he worked with him with, he recorded, he wrote down. I'm talking about tape recordings, which is what they had in those days, and probably because they did, those things are still around. Documented case after case, and this book is filled with documented case of working with police who also documented, double documentation of what he said and whether the facts were correct or not, finding people, dead bodies, criminals, what happened, and he was astonishingly correct, as most of them are. But of course, your clown college graduates will come out and point out, well, this guy didn't get this one thing right. Yeah, like you juggled all the time. You burned your mouth every time you learned how to fire eat, you big galoot. What is that nonsense? And where does anybody in any business have a 100% success rate? When we're coming into these astonishing things, it's amazing that they are such a high success rate in general. You know, it's really upsetting, and people should be enraged. These kind of people are committing crimes against humanity. They're suppressing the ultimate empowerment we have in life, which is human consciousness, and that it can solve all our problems, not turning it over to an emotionless, fake AI technology. There's no such thing as AI. Point is that turn it over to machine and you get what you want. But of course, we all know that the controllers and those involved in controlling people love to have machines do the work. And of course, they can blame it. You know, like people blame the gun killed him. No, it's the person who pulled the trigger who killed him. But of course, they'll love to do that. So that's all part of what's going on, part of this horrific crimes against humanity when we don't put the emphasis on ourselves as humans to solve the problems and the great consciousness that we have to work from. And here was noted. He did lots of healings for people, but those aren't very interesting because the healing the local person doesn't mean much. So the book is dedicated to documenting scarily accurate information that was given in most of his work. And he was tested throughout Europe by many different professionals, and particularly in a time and era when people weren't as hostile. At least there were people studying it, and it wasn't considered you're the leper if you study this, and to be harassed by your local community and so forth, which is all part of what happens in this day and age, because everybody jumps on you if you are anywhere involved in this research. It's just stupid. They used to do this with, this went through a period now with extraterrestrials, and still is to a large degree. Someone says, well, I see extraterrestrial craft or other things, or just have an interest in it. These people are treated like lepers, and this is done deliberately. So we move into these areas, and this is the problem that happens now. Now, in the 60s and 70s, and there's thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of books written on all these areas of interest through this particular 20-year period, pretty much from 55 to 75, and even past that, where there's documented this. UFO groups used to be full of scientists and professional people, because it's fascinating. Why wouldn't you want to research this? Now it's all come down to a bad joke. And of course that's changing now, because almost everybody believes that there is extraterrestrial life, physical extraterrestrial life that is visiting us in physical crafts and doing that types of things. Not interdimensional beings and all that other nonsense. So I diverse. So we get back to this amazing man and Tenhoff. Now this is a noted professor. And he studied him not on one case, on many. And this isn't juggling tricks. This isn't what's the number in the box, which they say, yeah, that's magic tricks. That's magic tricks. Nonsense. These are things working with tape-recorded interviews, working with police to solve actual cases. And of course, the lying skeptics like to tell you that this is all fraudulent and nothing ever happened. And yes, there's a lot of that. And good-meaning people went out to help, and some of them are in prison right now for trying to help the police because they had too much information. But same old story. Psychics have helped people. There are hundreds, probably thousands of documented cases of psychics assisting, or to say the biophysically empowered people of helping police in many ways. And now, since there's the pressure from the clown college graduates, these people are laughed at. They don't talk about it anymore. How stupid. You get help wherever you can get it from. That's why the military is involved in the occult sciences, etc. When you got a bullet screaming at your head, if you have to pull your pants down and scream Yahoo and it works, you do it because you're alive. So as we move into that, we have to understand. So case after case here, and I'm not going to go into the details more. Everybody should try and get a hold of this book, which, as again, all classic literature tends to be cheap. Almost all the books I buy are under $8, including shipping, because nobody wants them, because nobody's heard of them again. But I see books like this on psychics time and time again, and I'm going to keep making book reviews of them. So don't go to Seweropedia. If you go to Seweropedia, you're going to get garbage. I'm not sure even if anything they say, anything else is right. But of course, how can you lie about the essence of paint? So the whole idea is that when it comes to very common things, but you got to remember there's a lot of little people out there. These people have nothing better to do, paid by lots of different groups to go out there and mess up people like this who saved people's lives. He healed people. He did very good work, and he gets pooped upon by the uneducated scumbuckets out there, the clown college graduates, the convicted felons, the little deviates. It's really pathetic, and almost none of these people have even graduated high school. Really, people, what is going on here? And let's talk about this author again. Okay, so one of the things I think is important here, and of course, is the credibility. Oh, he's a dumb author. He did it for the money. Oh, well, you're not doing it for the money, huh, Skepti boys? Sure, we know that. You work for free. So, Jack Harrison Pollock has devoted 5 years. Has anybody here devoted 5 years of their life to anything of any great importance? I mean, some people go to college, other people go in the military, not because usually they want to, because they do it because they have to, because they don't have any other choices or whatever. But that's not really devoting. You know, you took 5 years out of your wasted 5 years out of your life doing that. Although, of course, people do go to colleges. But I'm not talking about that. It's kind of a normal thing that people do if you have any kind of support system. Has anybody taken that time? So this guy took 5 years out of his life. I'm not sure where he got the money from, but maybe the publishing house gives you advances to pay on this. Of course, it's a hot subject. And this book was published in 3 different runs, so somebody read it. And of course, people were reading this like crazy in the 70s in particular. This was going to save the world. And it would have. But the cowards that got into it, who sold out for their BMWs and their sweaters, deserted the cause, number one, and very weak-kneed people involved in parapsychology. It's really pathetic. He devoted 5 years to researching, writing, checking the amazing Croiset story. Mr. Pollock is the founder and former president of the Society of Magazine Writers. So here's a guy who was the president of the Magazine Writers Association. Well, this guy was well connected, knew lots of people. That's probably why he had the extra time or got advances so he could do a project like this. This is a very credible person. And a former U.S. Senate committee investigator. U.S. Senate committee investigator. You know where the people go out and decide where our money goes to? Who policy changes, laws are based on, even wars can be started or ended or began or whatever because of the investigations done by a person like this. Senate Committee Investigator.
Thor, he ain't got no credibility. He didn't go to clown school.
Well, you can't have everything, people. Though he began as a skeptic, as most people do, I mean, everybody wants to be proven that all this is. It's not part of your normal life because you haven't made it part of your normal life. So everybody goes in skeptical, and as they should. Propter skeptical, which means I don't believe nothing. Can be true, it cannot be true. Let's see the proof. Not that this is impossible. That's how your skeptics and debunkers work. Though he began as a skeptic, he admits I witnessed too many of Croiset's accomplishments which cannot be dismissed as sheer chance or coincidence. So, plain the fact, he documented all this. He spent years going through the papers, talking to all the police. And, you know, this is, he worked throughout Europe and with many different police departments, not only the, I forget, it was Brussels University that supposedly tested him. I haven't been able to find. It wasn't in this book, but certainly, as in many situations, particularly this person, Gerard Croiset, was a very down-to-earth man interested in what he could do to assist people and use his gifts for good. Not sitting in a room guessing cards, looking in boxes. This bored him to tears, and nobody performs well if they're bored. You don't learn well, you don't perform well, period. So you're not going to do good in a classroom situation when you want to get out into real studies. Now, he did real studies. What do we need further testing for? Why does someone have to sit in a room and be tested hours and hours over and over again to prove what? To prove water is wet? Do I need to pour a glass of water over my head 55 times to prove that it's wet? Well, that's apparently what scientists do. So they waste a lot of time and money. What you should be doing is taking these people, applying them to real-life situations, which, by the way, again, can't be fixed very well or even contrived in some manner. If you bring in a situation that has just occurred or something that has occurred, and you ask them to determine the facts on it, like someone who's missing, a crime, etc., and they're able to give you a very direct information, well, seems to me that's a lot better than card guessing, which in itself has been criticized as being just a statistical data thing that can come out to anything. So, of course, nothing satisfies the criminal skeptic people, the crimes against humanity that they continue to push on everyone. So here it is, people. I highly recommend everyone get this book. It's a paperback book. As I said, it's low cost, and you'll be able to go into in-depth. Now, this is what people can do. It also talks about, of course, this person's an individual. There's a lot of very interesting things here for the occult science student to catch as well. And, of course, that's what I'm always looking for in all these books. Well, what makes this tick? Are there any, this guy tick? Is there any tips that we can get to apply in our general practices to make ourselves more empowered? What was interesting to learn, of course, makes a lot of sense. I don't think if people understand this, but, you know, where a psychic comes from really helps them in terms of their life experiences identify things that happen. If you grow up on a farm or some other or in a city and you need to come into a case and identify something, well, if you've never seen something, how are you possibly going to identify it well? So it never really occurred to me, but this is all part of this whole area of really occult science, figuring out how it works as a science, which it is, that needs to be understood. So if a psychic, a clairvoyant, comes in from a person who's living on a farm all his life, well, he's going to be able to identify trees, shrubs, grasses like other people can. If you're from the city, yeah, that's a bush over there. Yeah, it's a tree. They all look like the same to me. They're all trees. Well, you're not going to get that from a farmer. He's probably going to tell you, well, that's a pine tree. That's a apple tree, whatever it is that they're going to be. So this is very important, which a regular clairvoyant's not going to. They're not going to know what that tree is. The same thing if you're a person from the farm. If you bring them into a city situation, it's going to be difficult for them to identify certain things because they're not going to know what it is. And they're going to describe things which you would think are simplistic to know that they wouldn't. So that's a very interesting way of looking at these things, and any clairvoyant needs to expand their understanding of general life knowledge so things can come into their head easier. So if you need to identify or know something, well, if you have that information that you've studied in the past, this will dramatically assist in it coming to your consciousness in a situation you may need it. So, yet again, and as I said, I've got several more books like this I'm going to be coming out with different famous people that are 20, 30, 40 years ago, similar to Harry Price, the fantastic investigator. We need to know all this, and we need to understand of all the research that's went into this. We keep being lied to that this is something that there's no proof of anything. We have 150 years of proof, and of course the parapsychologists who represent this area in the scientific world, scientists, these bozos never are coming out in any kind of forceful way to unmask these clown college convicted felon deviants to let the public know this is who you're following. Instead, no, you're a goofball professor, and that's how they look at it. And they give a high school dropout juggler, because he's got a big mouth and gets everywhere and can connect a few sentences together fairly well, credibility because he's there. There are no people on the, quote, lecture circuit that are out there doing that. And the kind of stupidity I run into from parapsychologists, well, we can find out what that all is. And you have to wonder, are they just stupid? Are they just paid? Are they cowards, etc.? Jeffrey Mishlove has stated that he was fearful to print the PK Man and didn't do so for 10 years because he's afraid of the backlash. Are you a parapsychologist? That's part of the game. And the problem is that the turn on everybody since the Reagan years has pushed people out of the industry. But, there's still a lot of money there from other people in past, and where is it going? Who's got it? What's happening? Well, who really knows? All of this is a complete and total joke. And no one has the guts to do it. I'm the only one that speaks out on these issues, always has been. And of course, this has been something that's not unusual in my life, because I'm the only one that speaks up, tells a teacher he's wrong, stops problems where things shouldn't be going on. Not the snitch for the police or the administration, but the person who's trying to make sure that truth and justice is followed through. You're not going to get that from the weak-kneed parapsychologists. It's really pathetic. But here we go again, people. Watch for more to come.